Good evening. It's fantastic to see everyone here. We want to welcome those that are in the auditorium tonight, those are teens that are meeting with Adam downstairs, and they're seeing the exact same thing we are. And welcome to everyone that's online. We've looked forward to this workshop for a few weeks now, and we're very encouraged that our brother Chad was able to be here. Now, I'll give you a little detail on his heroics of today, but let's start out with a prayer. Please bow. God our Father, we thank you for your love and your wisdom, Father. We thank you for everyone that's in attendance here, Father, and everyone that's participating online. We thank you, Father, for Chad's safe arrival, Father, his efforts, his preparation, Father. We pray that you would be with Chad as he makes his presentation tonight, tomorrow night, and Wednesday night, that it can impact every one of us, Father, parents, youth, every individual, Father, in our congregation. We look to you, Father, for your wisdom and guidance, and we pray, Father, that you would deal kindly with us during this period of possibly inclement weather. And guide us, Father, and it's in the name of Christ that we pray. Amen. A short indication of why we're here. We're here. COVID, we've been about this for about a year. Everybody's got digital devices. Yes, even I got mine, and I was the last one in my family to come in and actually do a text. I was somewhat intimidated by it, but anyway, I've gotten over that. We spend a lot of time on digital media. It impacts us all. And if you don't think it is, just look yourself in the mirror, because unless you're different than most everybody else, it's going to have some impact. You're going to see something, you're going to hear something there that can maybe in the back of your brain, and it's nothing different with our youth. So while this is titled, per Chad's preference, as a digital parenting workshop, it's intended to cover the whole spectrum of anything to do with digital media, digital devices, the internet, social media, the whole thing, and we trust that you'll be able to get something out of it. Now, we don't know what the weather tomorrow brings, but you're invited to come back, tomorrow night, especially all of our parents, to come in. If you can't, at the very minimum, come in and take advantage of the live stream that we're going to have. And then Friday night, we're going to come in and have the activity with a special session for our youth. The youth will be here. Anybody else, adults, whatever, you're welcome to participate downstairs. But all services are live streamed. All services are going to be recorded. But a few weeks ago, the elders were in our discussion there of just, what is it that's having impact. You can tell as you're communicating with the brethren, you're coming in here, you feel that, there's social media, there's frustrations, there's this and that. So although we're targeting the youth, it is, as I said, something for the entire congregation. So we started to think, where within the brotherhood could we find someone that was capable, experienced to come in and make a presentation, a workshop that could give us the information from a very spiritual perspective. We started out locally of checking with counselors that we had visited with. Do you know of anyone? No. Reached out, and I think between Elijah and Adam, they were able to know from their contacts, be able to contact and give us information on Brother Chad Landman. Now, I'm not going to take long, but I think it's worthy to understand that he is qualified from a number of unique perspectives on this. And Chad's been preparing for this. By the way, this is the first workshop that Chad has presented in over a year. Cause of COVID. Okay? This is his 54th workshop, so he is not a novice at doing this type of activity there. He's the education minister for the Graymere Church of Christ in Columbia, Tennessee. And that's in the part of the central part of Middle Tennessee, for you that are not familiar with Tennessee geography there, a large congregation. Prior to being there, and by the way, he served in this capacity, there is the education minister in the Graymere congregation for 6 years. 4 years prior to that, he was the youth minister for one of the congregations in Lewisburg, Tennessee. And for those of you familiar with Tennessee. That's just a little bit further south, getting real close to the Alabama line there. He and his wife Bonnie have been married for 13 years and have 3 boys, Jacob 9, David 6, and Michael 4. He's a former active Marine serving from 2000 to 2004. We were trading war stories over the phone a day or two ago. I happened to have seen a war flick. It was based on a true account in Afghanistan there, where somebody was driving a big truck and went off the side of the hill. And Chad related, well, you know, Mac, I had a similar instance when I was driving a 6-ton military vehicle back when I was in the Middle East. That was Afghanistan, is that right? Same place. So he can tell some war stories too. Chad has a degree in ministry and media arts from Freed-Hardeman University, 2008. He writes about technology and Christianity on his website. Information has been provided to you on that. And he speaks frequently in area churches using his active digital parenting curriculum. And we've provided you details with regard to the website there. Please keep in mind, we've sent you information, and you can go on and look at the website. And if you want to anonymously send Chad a question that he can then try to entertain while he's here, do so. He'll look at it. You don't have to say anything, but there's an opportunity that you can get information, a question to him. If you feel more comfortable with giving it to Adam or Elijah, one of the elders, or Chad while he's here, if you want something. We hope this is a resource you can take advantage of. All right? We'll be having copies. Elijah, where is you? Anyway, there's a workbook that he actually has, and we'll have copies of that, so you'll be able to take something home with information too. Take the websites that we've sent out to everybody. You can send those to your children. I've sent my kids anywhere in the current world, the universe. Let them know that they can come in. Not only that you can get back on these sessions even after they're recorded and be able to look in. This is information that Chad freely makes available to anyone and everyone at no additional cost, so you can come in and take advantage of the information. It's just that important. So I beg you to please give your complete and full attention. Now is Chad Landman. And by the way, Chad left Columbia, Tennessee in an ice and snowstorm this morning at 5:30, at 6:30 our time. He's traveled the first 3 hours on his drive over, coming up to 65 to get on to, is it 65 or 24? 65. No, he's 65, coming up to Nashville and getting on the east side of Nashville. Took him 3 hours, normally what would take him to 1 hour, so it set him back. And then he coming through 40, going through the mountains, whatever, and around the Triad, he came to a dead still on traffic. He had barely minutes to get here. He got here 20 minutes before we were starting the night and had to get everything switched over. So we'll cut him a little bit of slack, other than from an occasional rest stop there. He's been on the road since dark 30, you might say, literally. Chad, we're delighted you're able to be here, and we look forward to your presentation. Now, at the end of this activity, Chad, when he says the class is over, it's over, we'll not have an invitation. There won't be a song. It's our normal Wednesday night protocol. So when we're done there, and then Chad will be around if you need to engage him after service. Chad?
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the organization has been pretty great. I did not drive a truck off the side of a mountain in Afghanistan, but it did feel like that about 6:30 this morning, trying to drive over some of those snow drifts out of my front driveway. My driveway was the hardest part of the trip today, believe it or not. And so that was it. And so we had about, I'd say, between anywhere from 4 to 5 inches of ice, not snow. It looks like snow, but it's not nearly as fun as snow. As my 6-year-old found out, he went out into the yard and he said, "Daddy, this is hard snow." And I said, "Yeah, it's not snow, buddy. It's not snow at all." So I appreciate your flexibility. And I arrived 20 minutes before I was supposed to speak, which is 5 minutes before the Marine Corps says that I have to be anywhere. So that's always very good to be 15 minutes prior at any one moment. We are going to be talking tonight about becoming a better digital parent. What you have in your hands is a workbook, and you do not need to follow along with that at any point. That is just for you to take home. That is for you to have. And if you go to this website starting tomorrow, because I forgot to update it in my haste in the last few days and the craziness of the last few days, it will be updated tomorrow morning. But if you go there tomorrow evening, you will find this same document there with accurate links to be able to download on your computer, and you can click those links on that PDF and go directly to those websites. So don't worry about typing those things in. Also, the presentations on this webpage will be updated as well. You can actually go to activedigitalparenting.com and check that out. It'll send you to that same page on my personal website. You can also like us on Facebook if that's the thing that you'd like to do. But again, to emphasize what Max said, to email me if you have questions. You can actually submit a question on that website. I have gotten more questions from this church than any other church in the 54 things that I've done before. So you guys hold the record now. So you can just stop. No, but I think I got 4 yesterday on my, I was trying to pack and trying to get ready and trying to do all this sort of stuff, and I was like, I'll do it later, kind of thing like that. So, great questions. We will be addressing most of those tomorrow evening. So tomorrow evening, if you had a question that you sent me through the website or through the email, I will be addressing that before we get started on sessions 2 and 3 tomorrow evening. So let's talk about our schedule, or schedule as they say over the pond there. Tonight we're going to talk about why we should be paying attention, how to become a better digital parent. Okay? And this is going to be aimed at parents. The teen stuff is Friday night. The young people stuff is Friday night. I'm not talking to young people tonight. I'm talking to you, the parents. And if your young children are in here, that's completely fine. But it's going to be a little bit of inside information, so to speak. And so it's stuff that they need to hear, but it's stuff that you need to put into practice. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Tomorrow night, and if you can be here at all in person, I would really love that, because those are the 2 more discussion-oriented sessions. And I want feedback from you, and I feed off of and I answer your questions. Tonight's mostly just going to be a talk. Tomorrow night is going to be mostly discussion. And so we're going to talk about what we're up against, and we're going to talk about how we will better protect our children. How are you going to take these things? And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg that I'm hitting tonight and tomorrow night. But how are you going to take these things home, go through the settings on those devices, and apply these principles? Okay? Let's start first by talking about what came before. And I don't mean before COVID. Okay? That's what people say in the before times. They mean in 2019. No, I'm talking about when I was a freshman in high school in 1996. I'll be 40 this year. How many of y'all are in that age bracket? Okay? And how many of you have kids in that age bracket? That's why you're here and paying attention, or grandkids for that matter. In 1996, what were we telling kids? There was no mobile phones. There might have been a fancy Nokia phone that you could play Snake on. Remember that? And all the old people laugh and the young people go, huh? What are they talking about? In 1996, we told kids, don't get into strangers' cars. Don't get into unmarked white vans with no windows. Okay, don't do that. And whatever you do, don't meet people on the internet. The internet is a weird place. We don't meet people on the internet, right? Well, what happened in, 20 plus years or less? Maybe even the last 10 years. We literally summoned strangers from the internet to get into their car. And I'm kind of not joking about that. We have a service and we could literally catch a ride to the airport by inviting a stranger on our phone to come to our house to pick us up and ride in their car. Right? That's how much things have changed in just the last 10 or 15 years. Think about how much things have changed in our perception of this technology in just the last 5 years. Think about the world events that this technology has influenced over just the last 5 years, just the last 12 months, as we sit here with our masks on and we're out afraid to shake people's hands still and hopefully getting vaccines, right? It's strange. The times have changed. The temptations have not. The times have changed. Pornography has been around for centuries. Not using our brains when we speak and when we say something has been around for centuries, not just since 2005 when Facebook came along, okay? These temptations to do and sin and do the wrong things have been around for a long, long time. The times have changed, but the temptations have not. When we think about this, parents, and again, I'm talking to you parents this evening, this is really a parenting issue first. We need to think about our good, godly parenting first. We need to think about how we are raising our kids in the church, in God's love, showing them the love of Christ. We need to think about all of those things before we even think about what a screen is doing to our kids. Because if we raise them the right way, and again, this is not a parenting class, it's a digital parenting class, but I'm just going to go on a soapbox for a second. If we raise them the correct way, if we raise them to be what I call responsible digital citizens, then the technology part's going to be a non-issue. We're going to have responsible kids running around knowing exactly how they're supposed to act, both in real life and on their devices. But I will say, this is a technology issue second, because guess what? The technology is to blame just a little bit. Some of these apps and services and phones and these different things are specifically designed to addict us. They're specifically designed to suck us in, to make sure that we see the right things so that we just keep on scrolling, right? So that we hit that share button because something makes us angry. Did you know that anger is the number one motivator for you to share or interact on Facebook? It's also a technology issue, and we have to be cognizant of that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in our sessions. But I've got a special session on Friday night for the teens, and we're going to be specifically talking about addictions with technology and addictions in general. Okay? Albert Mohler said this a couple of years ago. The digital age is upon us. In the span of less than 3 decades, we have redefined the way that humans communicate, entertain, inform, research, create, and that last one's very important, connect. And what we know now is only a hint of what is to come. That quote both terrifies me and excites me at the same time. Because what new technology, what could possibly be better than this? What new technology can come along to make our lives easier or more entertaining, right? But also, what damage could this technology do if it's unregulated by us as parents? If it's unmanaged, if it goes ill-managed, I guess? When we think about those things, we need to think about all these stuff. This is just to get your thoughts moving as we move into the second and third talks tomorrow night. So I really want to encourage you. Again, I'm going to plug it several times, but the meat is going to be tomorrow night. This is just the milk tonight. So really the meat of our talking and all the different things we're going to discuss is going to be tomorrow night, especially that third session. I want you to open your Bibles if you have them, Psalm 127:1. Psalm 127. I think this is applicable. I think that this speaks to the larger picture of us being parents and grandparents and guardians. Psalm 127:1 simply says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain." In other words, unless the Lord is building the house, you're wasting your time. I had one of these experiences not too long ago. My dad got all the carpentry genes in our family. He's been a carpenter and contractor for 40 plus years. He retired just last year. And I bought one of those little dinky shelves from Walmart. You know, one of those little cheap, white shelves from Walmart you just use for nothing. Well, our little preschool wanted something to put little letters in, and I thought, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to get me a shelf at Walmart. I'm going to build it myself, right? And when I got done, guess what? It didn't look anything like what was on the box. It was like slanted. Shelves aren't supposed to like slant or move. That was kind of weird, right? And I wasted that time. I wasted those 30 minutes or an hour building that shelf because I didn't look at the instructions the right way. I wasn't paying attention. I probably was distracted by something on my phone. And I wasted that time building that. If we are building our homes as parents without God in mind, we're wasting our time. Likewise, if we are building our homes without thinking about how this technology is going to influence our children's lives in 2021 and beyond, we're wasting our time. We have to plug those things in, not just plug them in the case of God, we have to make Him the centerpiece of everything that we do. He has to influence every decision and every talk that we have with our kids. We have to make sure that He is part of the plan. And you're going to hear me over and over again tonight and tomorrow night say, what is your plan? Do you have a plan as far as it comes to parenting? I bet you do. I bet you've talked with your spouse about, well, if this happens and if we have to discipline in this way, this is how this is going to be, right? Have you talked about that as far as it concerns devices? Have you talked to your kids about having this plan? When and if, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when you mess up on your device, this is what's going to happen. When you do this thing, this is what's going to happen. We're going to take your phone. We're going to talk about it. We're going to do you have a plan? And it's very, very important. Even if you've got like one lady at our church, write it out on a poster board and put it on the fridge. If you've got to do that, then do it. Just have a plan. Plan with the end in mind. The end is a lot closer than you might think. Because the end of your influence as a parent, 100% of the time, is coming a lot faster than we all think. I turned around and I had 3 little baby boys. And now I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. It's blowing me away. By the time they turn 18, they go to college, they're 20, 21, 22 years old. You've stopped being their parent 100% of the time. You've moved into the part-time role. You are preparing them for then. So what are you doing and what plan do you have? That's an important question to have. Hopefully the tools that we talk about tonight and tomorrow night, at the end of this talk tonight, I'm going to give you about 7 things that you can go home tonight and do after your kids go to bed that are fairly simple and things you may or may not have thought about. Our children have lives online. Do we know what they're doing is the question. If you cannot answer in the affirmative, if you cannot say yes to this question with confidence, then you need to reevaluate. You need to make sure that you have that plan in place, that you are managing that device. And what I think has happened, what happens with a lot of groups of parents, is that yes, you do have some sort of a plan. Yes, you do have some sort of a strategy, but it's kind of maybe fallen apart. You've kind of lost your steam just a little bit. Hopefully this might reinvigorate you. If you're a parent that is just lost and doesn't know anything about how to do anything with that, hopefully some of these tools can get you started. But again, tip of the iceberg. It's going to be required of you to be the parent to go home and to implement these things. It's a whole other full-time job. You know, our kids are connected like we never were before. I had you raise your hand if you were in the kind of the 35 to 45 age bracket, right? That's where I'm at. I'll be 40 this year. I grew up in the late 80s and early 90s. We didn't have the internet. The internet came about when I was in high school. And what was it then? Well, think about these 2 things. When's the last time you saw these 2 things, parents? The kids in the crowd are like, well, I don't get, what is that? Is that the thing Superman changes in, right? I had a kid one time talk about a payphone. I was telling a story about how I used a payphone one time, and It was to a bunch of teens, and he said, yeah, we know a pay-as-you-go phone, right? I was like, no, a pay phone. Like, you walk in, you have to put a quarter in, and they're like, with a wire? And I just was flabbergasted. They had no idea what a payphone looked like. I had to find one on the internet and show them a picture, which was incredibly ironic that I was showing them a picture on my mobile phone of a payphone, right? What about America Online? Remember when the internet was a place that you had to go to? You had to like go to the library or something to get on the internet? Maybe you were in college in the early 2000s or late 90s when the internet was just coming about and colleges were kind of the first places to get really good internet. You still had to sign on. What was the most exciting thing on America Online? Most exciting thing? Just somebody, you got mail, right? Tom Hanks, right? You got mail. And you get on there and you hear that little thing, you got mail. And it was the most exciting thing in the world. Oh my goodness, I got mail. Somebody sent me an electronic mail message, right? And it was just crazy that we got that excited. And it took 12 minutes to get one email, right? And now, what do? We pull our phone out for the 5 seconds that we have to wait in line at the grocery store, right? And we're frustrated when it doesn't immediately open because we're wearing a mask on our face, right? Think about how far things have come. What if you were to take this device back in the Dr. Brown's time machine, go back to Raleigh in 1921. You were to take this device back and it worked just like it was supposed to. It took pictures, it accessed information, all that other stuff. People would be fascinated, wouldn't they? They would think that you're like a witch, right? And it would be, you would be crowded, you would be the talk of the town, and you would say something really profound like, with this device I can access the wealth of all human knowledge. And then they would ask the inevitable question, well, what do you use it for, really? It's like, well, mostly I just use it to look at cat videos on TikTok. Because that's what I use mine for, right? And we think about that, and that's funny. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a device in our pockets that can access the wealth of all human knowledge. In our pockets. And we're giving them to kids without any protections on them sometimes. We're giving them to 10-year-olds when I know 55-year-olds that can't control themselves on Facebook, right? Why would we give it to a 10-year-old boy? We've got to start thinking and using our brains a little bit. The number one question I get asked all the time is how young is too young to have a cell phone? Or what age can I get my children a cell phone? Because I need to stay in touch with them. Blah, 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 blah. I understand that, right? I want to know where my kid, if I could put a homing beacon on the back of my kids all the time, I would just do it, right? But we need to fight the urge as long as possible to not give our kids their own devices. 13, 14 is the minimum, I would say. And that's crazy to some of you probably. But that's when my boys are not going to get one. I don't want my boys to be the last people in their class to get a cell phone, but they can be the second to last. We need to be thinking about it. And if we're going to be uncommon people in a common world as Christians, our children also need to be uncommon people too. We really need to think about those things. As parents, there's a few things that we need to realize. Let me take a drink here. It's been a long day. We can never use the excuse that we didn't know. You ever said that? Oh, I didn't know. How many of your kids said that? Well, you need to be doing this. Come on, you need to be doing this. Well, I didn't know I needed to be doing that. How many times do your kids give you that excuse, right? I don't really like this time of year because minister taxes are very interesting. At least they are in Tennessee. And if you're an accountant or you're a person that deals with any of that kind of stuff, taxes in general are very, very complex. But for ministers, they're even more complex. Well, I don't know if I was sleeping through the course at Freed-Hardeman or through the class that day, but I missed the class on ministers and taxes. So my first full year in ministry, there was a little bit of a $4,000 mistake. And I owed the good old IRS $4,000. I had been married for about 8 months. How much money do you think I had? What newlywed has money, right? And we worked it out, obviously, but my excuse to the IRS was what? Well, I didn't know. How sympathetic do you think the IRS was? Well, we're happy to set up a payment plan for you, Mr. Landman. Okay, well, just sign me up then. I didn't know, or I didn't understand that was not a valid excuse. The information was there. It was probably taught in a class that I slept through at Freed-Hardeman. It was readily available on the internet. I could have talked to many different accountants that I knew in the church around there and asked them, what do I need to prepare for my taxes for the first... But I didn't do it. As parents, with these devices, I didn't know is not going to be an excuse. Well, I didn't know that app could do that. Well, I didn't know that the pictures were deleted after the fact. Well, I didn't know she or he was messaging this person. I didn't know they were meeting. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Because you ought to have known. You should have known. You have the power in your hands. We can use these very devices to secure the devices of our children. Did you know that? Google is your best friend as a parent. YouTube is amazing for showing some of the stuff that you need to see about how to secure your kids' phones, or about how my kid downloaded this app, and what is this app all about? Google it. And you've probably done that, and kudos to you. But if you haven't done that, your excuse to just say, well, I didn't know, it's not going to work. Number 2, your child does not yet have the experience and willpower to keep themselves in check on the internet. We know some older people. We know some 50-year-old guys that don't have their experience and willpower to keep themselves in check on their devices or on the internet. So why would we trust our young children to do the same thing? We need to be their guides. You know, there's a reason why we don't allow our kids to get driver's licenses until they're 16. Why is that? Because they don't have the knowledge. They don't have the wherewithal, whatever that means, right? They don't have the experience. They don't have the judgment to operate a motor vehicle going 65 miles an hour that's 3,000 pounds, right? And so we as a society have determined that they don't have that experience enough until they are 16 years old. Most of them at 16 don't even have that, right? So why are we giving 10-year-olds unlocked, unprotected iPhones and iPads? My 9-year-old is a... well, I'll spoil the talk tomorrow, but he's on the autism spectrum. And he's taken after me. He's a little tech whiz. And he is always engineering something on his iPad, always finding a setting that I forgot about. He's kind of like my beta tester with all the stuff. And so he's awesome at figuring out, oh, I forgot about that. Now I need to make sure that that's locked down. My kids have their own quote-unquote devices. But they're so locked down, they don't even have access to the internet, to the camera. They don't even have that access to YouTube Kids. You can do that. It's actually very simple to do. You can lock down your kid's phone to where it's literally just a phone if you want to. It's quite simple to do. And again, plug for tomorrow. We'll talk about that tomorrow evening. We need to use our heads when we're doing these things to give our kids these devices and put them in their hands. The one thing I hear from parents all the time, and this is a fallacy and it's very frustrating, is my kid is a good kid. My kid knows better. I've taught my kid better than that, so they're not going to do those things. That is what you call the devil whispering into our ear. That is a misconception. That is a falsehood. And if you believe it, and again, I'm not saying you don't have good kids. I know you have good kids. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. It's the other kids I'm worried about. It's the other parents that are going to influence your children to do the things. The number one enemy, I think, of kids these days is that they're naive. They don't intentionally do things maliciously most of the time. It's just a matter of fact that they're naive. They don't understand that putting your phone number on Facebook is not a good idea. or putting your social security number in an unprotected website or on Fortnite or giving it to somebody while they're playing Xbox is not a good idea. They don't understand it, so they need somebody to teach them. Just like you would spend months and months teaching them to pass the driver's test and teaching them how to drive and getting in an empty parking lot and all these other things, just like we hold our kids' hands. I have to relate it a little bit younger to my kids because when we cross the road, I've got two kids' hands, or my wife's got two kids' hands, and she's got the other, and you have to play kind of a zone defense when you got three kids, right? And before we cross the road, what do? Look both ways, right? Don't stick your finger in that electrical socket. Don't touch the pot while it's hot on the stove. We got our kids, and we hold their hands in every avenue of life. We need to hold their hands with the digital upbringing as well. It's no different. But because we were raised to be so, I wouldn't say cynical necessarily, but that's the only word that comes to mind. Because we were raised to be so discerning in our age, we think that our kids are going to naturally be that discerning when they're on these devices, and that's just not true. So we need to make sure that we understand that. A couple of crazy statistics here, and I don't give you these statistics to shock you. I've just given them to inform you. About 1.83 billion websites were on the internet as of last week. That's a source of Internet Live stats. They count every website that's coming up, and those are just sites. Those aren't pages. There's billions and billions of pages, but those are dedicated .coms, .nets, .orgs. You get the idea. 68 million of those are pornography websites. Now, you think, wow, that's a huge number. And if you do the math there, it's about 3.5%. You may have heard rumors or may have heard from other people that have said, well, 60% of the internet is pornography. It's not entirely true. Only about 3.5% of the internet is dedicated to pornography. And I'm going to pick on pornography a lot here in the next few minutes because it's one of those things that we think about when we think about the evils that we're facing, right? It's not the only thing that we need to be concerned about, especially with younger children, but it's one of those things we need to keep a watch for. These numbers aren't the ones that you need to be concerned about. This number is. 1 in 5 searches made on a mobile device are for pornography. 1 in 5, 20 to 22% of all internet search history on a mobile device, an iPhone, an iPad, Android phone, Kindle Fire device, pornography. A couple of really smart people said some things here, and I'll just read them. Adolescents who view pornography feel shame, diminished self-confidence, and sexual uncertainty. I don't think we need our kids to be any more sexually uncertain in this day and age, do we? We don't. Porn use by our youth is a greater threat to our national well-being than our economy. If you get connected with porn early in life, it alters your ability to relate. You think about your young man or young woman, and again, pornography is affecting young women these days as much as it is young men. We think it's just a boy problem. It's not. 46% of pornography issues are women, young girls. We need to be aware of that. Significant relationship exists between frequent pornography use and feelings of loneliness, including major depression in adolescents. We're talking about major depression in 13 to 18-year-old young people. My mother had to deal with depression. And it's not pretty. You may have dealt with that. A family member may have dealt with that. It's not pretty. Now imagine your 16-year-old dealing with it. Again, we need to be watchful. Parents are the weak link in the chain when it comes to protecting their children. You know what that means? That means when I wrap a chain around a big old stump and I get in somebody's truck. I don't own a truck. I know I live in Tennessee. That's a stereotype. But I don't own a truck and I live in Tennessee. But when I get in my youth minister's truck, he's a good guy. He has a big old truck. If I wrap a chain around that, if there's one link broken in that chain, guess where that chain's going to break? Right there. And sometimes we are that weak link. We can't be the weak link. We have to be that strong chain for our children. Okay? The average age of first exposure to pornography or nudity on a screen is 8 years old. Now, I will tell you, that is a relatively new stat that came out in 2019, before the pandemic, before we were looking at Chromebooks nonstop every single day, right? That's probably gone down just since 2019. But do you know what that stat was in 2009, just 10 years before? 11 and a half years old. Why? Access. We're putting these phones in kids' hands. And iPhones have only been around, can you believe this? iPhones have only been around for 14 years, yet it feels like they've been here since 1955. They're not that old, and this technology is not that old. 94% have seen nudity on their screens, most while doing homework. Why is that? And again, I know pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, whatever we're in right now, I know that may not be typical because your kids may be learning at home, but in a typical time where a kid is going to school and then coming home, why is it while most are doing homework? Well, when do you tell your kids to do their homework? Before I get home, right? Get your homework done before I get home at 5 or 5:30. That way we don't have to deal with it. Well, increasingly students are asked to get on the internet and to look at things, and guess what? They're kids. They're going to look at stuff they're not supposed to. They're going to get off on chasing rabbits and things like that. And we have to make sure that the devices that they are using are secure. 87% of sexual solicitations are made to youth in chat apps. WeChat, WhatsApp, TikTok. It's not really a chat app, but you can have chats in it. Facebook Messenger, Instagram, direct messages, all of these services that we know, you probably may or may not even known that it had a direct messaging feature. They have direct messaging features. Almost every single one of them. We need to make sure that we're monitoring those things. 67% admit to clearing a browser history or search history in order to hide internet usage from their parents. A kid when I was having a conversation about watching what we watch on YouTube one time with some of the Graymere youth, he was fairly open and honest with us, and he says, yeah, my parents never see what I watch. I said, really? And he says, yeah, I just delete the search history every time I close the app. You need to know that. We'll talk about YouTube and Netflix a little bit more tomorrow night as well. Can you see these plugs for tomorrow night? You see those happening, right? Number 3, and we're getting to the end here, and I promise we'll be done probably here in about 10 minutes if y'all want to make plans for that. Privacy is an illusion, and I cannot overstate this enough. If we think that there is any kind of privacy on the internet, we are duping ourselves. Let me tell you something. As the 40 to 45-year-olds that we are, anywhere from the age of 35 or 30 to about 45 right now, if you're in that age bracket and you're raising kids right now, you know, oh, of course, privacy is just an illusion. I understand that, right? Your kids probably don't. They probably don't understand that they're being tracked everywhere on the web. They probably don't understand that everything is leaving a trail, even the things that they go do in private mode and private messages that they send. Private, that shouldn't even be a word that's used on these devices because there's nothing that's private. This was 1 week in January of 2019. And I kept it up here. I know it's a little bit of an old story right now, but there was an app that Facebook was paying teens $20 a month to install on their phones. It was a VPN, a virtual private network, right? Apple was rushing to fix a FaceTime bug that would let you eavesdrop on somebody's conversation if you just did the right sequence of things in the right way. It was crazy. And there's more things that have come out with this. There's more things that have come out with how our data is being used against us, how our data is being misused and abused. I think that 2030 will look a lot different than 2020 did. Well, I hope anything looks different than 2020. But as far as the internet and our data and our privacy is concerned, I think there's going to be a lot of laws in the next 10 years that are going to be passed. And there's going to be a lot of regulation of little companies like Google and Facebook and even Apple about how our data is used. It's going to look a lot different, I think, by 2030 or 2035. It's going to be very interesting. But I think about privacy, and I think about our kids trying to hide things from us, and even spouses trying to hide things from us, and I think about Hebrews 4:13. What does it say? There is what? No creature hidden from His sight. Talking about God. There is no creature hidden from His sight. Everyone will be held accountable, is basically what it says. We can hide whatever we want to from our spouses. We can hide whatever we want to from our parents. We can hide whatever we want to from our church, from our employer, from our school, from anything like that. You can't really hide anything from the government, just so you know, right? So the government's going to know. But guess who we can't hide it from? God. Nothing is hidden from His sight. Every little message we type out, even privately, even the ones we delete. There's been a lot of those over the past year for me. I'll type out something mean. Oh, I'm going to give it to you. Delete, 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 delete. Right? Even God sees those. We have to be aware, and we have to make our kids aware of that fact that God sees all. And He is going to judge us by what we say out loud with our mouths, with our tongues, like in James chapter 3 we're going to look at tomorrow evening. And He's also going to judge us by what we type with our thumbs too. He's going to judge us by everything. You know, when we put something out there on the internet, it's kind of like a bucket of feathers. I was looking at the weather forecast for Raleigh, North Carolina, just to make sure that it wasn't like was going to be in Tennessee, although you're getting ice tomorrow, which, oh joy, that was great. I saw 40-mile-an-hour winds, like Friday or something. Thinking, wow, that's kind of crazy. But you know what? That's North Carolina. It's fine. I lived here for 2 years too. I lived down in Havelock. I was in the military. And so it's a little bit, I kind of know the area a little bit. But if you take a bucket of feathers out on a 40-mile-an-hour windy day, what's going to happen to those feathers? You could be an Olympic track star and not get all those feathers back in that bucket. When you put something out there, it is out there. When our kids type something and put it out there, even if it's deleted or encrypted or private, which none of those things exist anyway, it's out there. My friend in Mobile, Alabama, he said something that I've always stuck with me. It said, everything you put out there is public and permanent. At one point, Congress was cataloging every tweet that was tweeted up until about 2013 or so. And it got so raunchy and bad that they just stopped doing it. Everything that we do online is out there to stay. We have to make sure that our kids understand that. So, to wrap up, and I'm going to give you those 7 things here, technology is amazing. I wanted to say one positive thing before we get done. I know that was a lot of negative things. We're going to hear some positive things tomorrow night. Again, more plugs for tomorrow night. Okay? Technology is amazing, but we have to teach our children to use it responsibly. We have to start, as adults, using it responsibly as well. And I know that's a little small, but again, I'll make it available on my website tonight or tomorrow. These are some things that you can do home tonight. I'm going to go through these real quickly, and then we will be done, okay? So the first thing there is to make a list of devices in your home that access the internet, okay? I do this every 6 months. Every single time I'm surprised by at least one device. Every time. It's so crazy. So just make a list of devices. Get you one of those big legal pads, put a line right down the middle, and then put what device accesses the internet. Think about everything. Think about your TV now accesses the internet, right? Some of you may have, some weirdos may have a fridge that accesses the internet, right? I don't know what that's about, okay? I don't know what it's doing. It's telling you you're out of milk or what, right? But a fridge can access the internet. No joke. I have heard a story of a child looking up pornography on an Android-powered fridge. No joke. It happens, okay? If it can access the internet, it goes on that list. And on that right column right there on that legal pad, put what kind of parental controls you have set. If you don't have any, put none. And you will actually be able to audit everything in your house. Do it every 6 months. Do it tonight, do it tomorrow, if you have time. Have the child's device always managed / in your sight. I know that the in your sight part is nearly impossible, okay? But that kind of links to the next one. Take up all devices at bedtime. Now, that one is super popular with kids. They love that one, okay? They're just going to get, you know what, Mom and Dad, you're so right, here you go. They're going to fight you tooth and nail over that. But let me tell you some of the stories, and I won't tell them right now, but if I could tell you the stories of people that I've talked to where their child got in trouble, and again, it's a process, but their child got in trouble sending the wrong kinds of photos or watching the wrong kinds of things at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Your child does not need a phone to fall asleep. If they want to listen to music, there's these little things that we used to have called compact discs. Remember those? You can even go super retro and vintage and cool and get them a record player now. Okay? So if they need to fall asleep to music, that's fine. If they need to fall asleep to videos, you can get them a VCR, right? Let them watch old movies from the 90s, right? And also, if they need to use this as their alarm clock, they sell those at Walmart too. Did you know that? They still sell those for like $9.82. Have the child's device always in your sight. If you can, take up all devices at bedtime. Believe me, that will go a long way. Look for previous evidence and beware of suspicious apps. If you have to look for previous evidence, I know that's unpleasant, but you got to do it anyway. If your child has let you down before, if they have done something and lied to you about something on their devices before, you always need to be vigilant and looking. Beware of suspicious apps. You need to have physical access to that device every few days. You need to take that device from them at random intervals and go, what are you doing on here? What are you doing on here? Oh, what's this app? You need to be as nosy as possible because guess what? Your children don't get privacy unless they're going to the bathroom. Thank you for that. Amen. There we go. Need to hear more of that. There we go. We need to make sure that you are looking at your phones. And if they know, here's the thing. It works both ways. If your children know that at any moment you can grab their phone and start looking at it, you know what they're less apt to do? Stuff they're not supposed to. That's psychology right there. You need to make sure that you're doing that. Beware of suspicious apps. If you see on your child's phones they've got 4 or 5 calculator apps and they're not in the math club, you probably need to ask some questions. There was seriously a calculator app that masqueraded as a photo vault app that you could put a certain sequence of numbers in and it would flip over and become the secret photo vault. And an entire football team in Colorado several years ago was expelled because there was this sexting ring of all sorts of inappropriate photos of all the students. It was crazy. So again, any of those apps, and how that app got on the App Store, I have no idea, right? Last thing here tonight, and we'll be done. Kids and parents, you live your life on your devices no differently than you would in real life. We have got this misconception that we can say anything we want with our thumbs, but then we can come to church and worship on Sunday morning and smile at each other and say, praise Jesus, how you doing, and all this other stuff. And we've said the most awful things to somebody on Twitter the night before. Our kids, believe it or not, are seeing that example. Our kids are seeing the example that we set for them. So set great examples and your children will follow you. Okay? Thank you so much for your attention tonight. This will be the only lecture. We will have questions and answers tomorrow night. Again, one more plug for tomorrow night at 6:30. Mac, is that correct? 6:30 tomorrow night. And people online, thank you so much for joining us. If you will join us online tomorrow, we will have somebody monitoring for questions as well. I plan to answer those questions tomorrow evening. But please, if you can, be here tomorrow night at 6:30. It'll only be about an hour and a half or so. And so you'll be home in time to put kids in the bath and in bed. And I understand how that is, having little bitty kids. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to tomorrow evening as well. Thank you.